Thank you so much. Helena Wilkinson, BBC's news correspondent outside the course. Thank you. Outside the court. Thanks, Helena. Before I go, remember I was just having a chat with Matt Chorley about smarts, like how smart you are, and all the cliches about inarticulate footballers. Footballers, not saying this, but footballers being classed as thick. New research suggests that professional footballers are actually super clever individuals. There's a study which has been published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and this investigated the cognitive abilities of professional footballers and concluded they consistently outperform the average person. Leonardo Bonetti is from Oxford University in the UK and Aarhus University in Denmark and is one of the co-authors of the study. Leonardo, hello.
Hello.
Hello. Right, okay. Who did you actually examine as part of this study?
Well, we examined actually a large number of football players, elite football players, more than 200, coming from the top leagues in Brazil and in Sweden.
Okay, so you got them all together, and what level were these footballers playing at?
Well, they were the highest level, so essentially the highest possible league in Brazil and in Sweden. And we tested them with a number of different tests for understanding their cognitive abilities on the one hand, and to essentially define their personality, their key personality traits on the other hand.
Okay, give me examples then of what shows what. So their ability to do what shows what.
Sure. So essentially, when it comes to cognitive abilities, we tested them for executive functions, for memory, for planning, for ability of solving logical problems. And what turned out, as you mentioned before, is that these elite football players had very, very higher skills compared to control participants. And that means that they had better memory, so better ability of keep information in mind and also manipulate the information. And they also had better ability of solving logical problems and also of having more inhibitory control when exposed to stimuli and more cognitive flexibility in giving answers as well. So essentially, kind of the whole spectrum of cognitive abilities show that they are much smarter than control participants.
Do you think we've been, the press or, the public has just been too harsh on the mistakes that, say, footballers make, not being able to spot, I don't know, somewhere on a map or saying the wrong thing, seemingly being inarticulate? Do you think people judge the wrong things when it comes to being smart?
Well, partially, yes. I must say that in this study, we were interested in this performance kind of metrics, so these cognitive abilities per se, because we thought they were mostly related to football, and that's why we restricted our hypothesis to that. We didn't study necessarily the verbal intelligence, which is the ability of using words to express yourself and to express concepts. And I think some of the stereotypes related to the fact that football players might not necessarily be the smartest people in the world could be related to the fact that perhaps on a verbal level, they might not necessarily be actually better as they are instead when it comes to cognitive abilities related to these other skills
What,
that we tested.
because they focused on those practical skills rather than, say, being in education and academia?
Well, that's the other. I would say that these traits tend to be rather stable over the lifespan. So, of course, you can get better, you can get smarter, of course, but I don't think this is the case. I don't think these football players really train these skills. It's more that they were equipped with these skills and then they learn how to use that in football, perhaps. But then, of course, you are also right. There is the other reason that they tend not to be highly educated, because if you play football, you are very young and you probably don't want to get a degree at the university, for instance. And so that might also lead them to be less knowledgeable compared to other people. And I think that in general, there is a bit of confusion between being knowledgeable and being clever. And I think this might also be a way to disentangle football players, perhaps.
When you were talking to them, did you think you were cleverer than they were?
Well, that's a very tricky question to answer.
I know, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I could say that I didn't notice necessarily so much difference, which would be already very braggy from my side, given the results. But no, I mean, apart from joking, I think, well, again, when it comes to verbal skills, so interacting with them, you wouldn't necessarily perceive that they are particularly skilled. I would say more that when you see them in action, then you see that they can be very fast and very able to perform.
Yes or no? were you cleverer?
Well, was I more clever than them? Well,
Yes.
I
What do
really
you
should have
think?
answered that, I guess. But so, well, I don't know. I mean, let's say that I don't have the great physical skills as well. So yeah, perhaps I can get something from from the
Yeah.
clever part.
So, look, I suppose it comes down to, if I think of my friends and who I think is smart, they all have very different attributes as to why I think they're smart. And that's the way we should just be looking at people, no?
Yeah, that's a very good. That's a very good point. I think it would be necessary to clarify that intelligence is not something very simple or very much restrictable to just a set of a few skills. There are many different skills that can be considered intelligence, and therefore, depending also on what people, on how people act within the environment, different things might be more or less important. So,
Indeed.
again, once again, in this case, for football players, it's very important to act properly when it comes to this performance kind of skills.
Indeed, it matters. Leonardo Bonetti, thank you. You've got the smart match surely next.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Flattery will get me everywhere, Naga. Yeah, good afternoon, Matt Chorley live from Westminster on a Wednesday afternoon, which means we've had PMQs. You know that because you're